Now, Victoria, of course, is already an international embarrassment around the world, thanks to the Labour Party and, of course, Daniel Andrews, our Premier. But to add to those woes, we are once again the talking point of the world and yet again another point of embarrassment for us Victorians. And this time courtesy of the fact that we are pulling out of the 2026 Commonwealth Games as the host city. All of a sudden, over a matter of a day, this shock announcement has been made and it's making international news. This is on the New York Times. We also have on CNN and the Washington Post as well covering this story. So this is an international story of significance, and all of this embarrassment, of course, is down to Daniel Andrews. But before we go into why he's caused us this embarrassment and whether this decision is a good decision or a bad decision, let's just have a look at how he made this announcement back in April 2022 and how he made the withdrawal. And this is a video I spliced together showing the comparison. So this first footage that you're seeing is from when he made the announcement of this wonderful thing that we're holding in 2026. And of course, all of this was leading up to the election in November 2022. Let's have a listen in.
These will be a Commonwealth Games like no other. We promised that we wouldn't be doing a rerun of 2006, as successful as that was. The opening ceremony will be in Melbourne, and the rest of the program, all the events, will be conducted in regional Victoria.
A few moments later.
In terms of where we go to from here, the Games will not proceed in Victoria in 2026. We have informed Commonwealth Games authorities of our decision to seek to terminate the contract and to not host the Games.
This is very, very exciting. A Games like no other. Exactly what we promised, and we're delighted to say that the partnership between our government and Commonwealth Games Federation is very, very strong.
So yeah, exactly what we promised. And I wrote on this post that I shared earlier, if breaking promises and poor financial management was a Commonwealth Games sport, Daniel Andrews would be the most decorated gold medalist of all time. Now, many of you might be wondering, is it actually a bad thing to actually cut these games altogether? Because when they were actually announced, a lot of people criticized these games being announced and Victoria taking on this type of pressure faced with the current economic situation in our state. We are, in fact, the most in debt, state that's in the most debt across the country, hundreds of billions of dollars in debt, thanks to this man in particular and the Labor government. And on top of that, they took on this challenge of the Commonwealth Games. They hired, a committee. They gave jobs to former people who were involved in the COVID management, like Jerome Weiner or Weimar, and so on. There's so many stories related to this in the typical fashion that Daniel Andrews and the Labor Party manages these type of projects. Now that we're hearing that, the cost blowout is somewhere between $6 to $7 billion potentially, when originally they were forecasting something below $3 billion. It's a massive, massive difference. So no, I don't think any reasonable Victorian would welcome spending $7 billion, $8 billion, whatever it is, on the Commonwealth Games. Even the $2 billion was questionable at the time, but the government put their hand up. They formed these committees. They did all these things, and they took on the responsibility of doing this on the world stage. And now they've backed out of it because it looks like for all intensive purposes, they took on something that they couldn't handle. They mismanaged things. The Commonwealth Games, the organisers, the body that's responsible for it, has come out against what the Premier has said about these cost blowouts and actually blamed the Victorian government in many ways for, this grandiose idea they had of having this in the regions. That was one of the big things with these Commonwealth Games, that it was going to be in the regional areas of Victoria. So, Ballarat, Bendigo, places like this, not in the heart of Melbourne. Now, on paper, that seems like a good idea, but that comes with all types of challenges. Obviously, we don't have the infrastructure in the regions to host this international sporting event. Even though it only goes for 12 days, the facilities required, the mechanisms required for people staying in those areas in terms of, housing and hotels and hospitality and so on, as well as just the foot traffic of getting people into those areas, right? It's a big logistical task, and these guys, took it on for that amount, under $3 billion. The exact figure I don't have. I think it's about $2.5 billion, but they took on this challenge, and then it's come back to bite them on the back because they've realized throughout the process, whatever grandiose, vanity type idea they had in doing these things, it doesn't actually compute, and it's actually going to cost a lot more. That's my reading of it. But you can correct me if you think there's another explanation for all of this, because it's quite embarrassing, and it shows the fact that these people involved in our government can't even manage like a sporting project. No wonder the other projects that our state manages, like the roads and the tunnel projects, they have massive cost blowouts, and it makes sense. These people are incapable of managing anything in our state. But to add to all of these woes, it's just embarrassing hearing from the actual committee that was in the organizers and their comments about our government. Since awarding Victoria the Games, government has made decisions to include some more sports and an additional regional hub and change plans for venues, all of which have had a considerable expense, often against the advice of the Commonwealth Games Federation and Commonwealth Games Australia. We are disappointed that we are only given 8 hours notice and that no consideration was given to discussing the situation to jointly find solutions prior to this decision being reached by the government. Up until this point, the government has had advised that sufficient funding was available to deliver the Victoria 2026 Commonwealth Games, and so on. You can read these statements online. A lot of the press is covering these things, and the committee headed by Jerome Weimer. This guy was one of the COVID commanders who got this cushy job. I think it was about $500K a year to run the Commonwealth Games as the CEO. The Victorian CEO of the Commonwealth Games, and they've put out their little thing on social media as well. And the first responsibility of the Victorian 2026 Commonwealth Games Organising Committee was to deliver a robust and credible plan for delivering the first ever multi-city games. Did we need the first ever multi-city games? Like, these are tasks that they took on. Over the last year, we recruited a world-class team who have worked tirelessly to build and cost the delivery program. How much has all of this cost us? Because this has been in planning for almost a year, as far as and in terms of the procedure before, it may be longer, but at least 1 year we've had this happening in our state. There would be a lot of resources, time, and costs being put into this that is all now down the drain. This is another failed and wasted project that is costing the Victorian public. Of course, it's better that it's cancelled where it doesn't cost us billions of dollars if these people are incapable of actually running it under the cost that they actually initially agreed to. But still, this is still an international embarrassment. But of course, Daniel Andrews fans, in particular, I've picked one out here, Dan Fangirl, worshippers of Daniel Andrews. They are very proud of Daniel Andrews for having screwed up. And this is a lot of the commentary that we're seeing from supporters of Daniel Andrews. And I think this is the main reason that we're actually in these type of situations in our state, because these supporters are now jumping up and down saying, Daniel Andrews did a great and amazing thing by, now rerouting these extra funds towards hospitals and schools and all this kind of stuff. Should be doing that anyway, Daniel Andrews, right? He should be doing that anyway. Should we be taking up these sports when we're in this so much debt and so much distress as a state prior to an election, mind you? And it's something they boasted about leading up to the election, of course. But now all of a sudden, that's all done and dusted. Let's cancel these things. But let's see what Dan Fangirl is saying. If you are proud of Dan for making the right decision to cancel the Commonwealth Games and put money into stuff that's much more needed, tweet, I stand with Dan, to shut up the noisy trolls who didn't want the games to happen anyway. Hashtag I stand with Dan. Thanks, Dan. There he is. There's the mismanager of our funds. And this is this is a tweet that I shared that they made last year when the games were awarded to Victoria. This same Dan Fangirl wrote, thanks, Dan, hashtag. And hashtag Go Dan should trend because he got us the Commonwealth Games. And this is from the 6th of this year, 6th of June 2022. Nobody else wanted the Commonwealth Games because they're not set up like we are. We already have the facilities ready to go. Like Mars Stadium that Dan built to bring the AFL to Ballarat, and Geelong Stadium that Dan upgraded to bring big gigs to Geelong. Think it through. These people are so blinded by this guy, and he has been hoodwinking this state now for years upon years. And now we find ourselves upon this ruinous position where we are now a joke, an international joke, the sporting capital of the world, pulling out of sports because they don't even have the money anymore, or just the brains and the capability to host an event and actually hold these organizers and so forth accountable and do things in a manageable way, which is what you'd expect from any other reasonable leader or state around the world. Anyway, guys, what do you think? Do you think it's good that the Commonwealth Games have been cancelled? Do you think Daniel Andrews did a great thing? Do you think he should get a pat on the back for his great achievement of screwing up these games to the point where he has cancelled them and now he's being lauded as a hero of sorts? If you're enjoying my videos, you can follow me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Rumble, and Odyssey. Not on Threads. I've just stopped using Threads altogether. At The Real Rukshan, or you can look up my name, Rukshan Fernando. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.